Well, with May just around the corner, I thought I'd make a short video here just demonstrating how I set up a line and leader combination when fly fishing for lingcod and bottomfish out of Puget Sound and off the coast of Washington. Generally speaking, I'll be throwing this particular combination with a fast 10-weight fly rod. When fly fishing for lingcod, you need a pretty beefy rod for a couple of reasons. One, just because the flies and the lines that you toss are really big and heavy, and two, because lingcod are big fish. They're strong, and while they generally don't make long screaming runs and jumps and things like that, what they will do is try to get you down to the bottom and break you off in the rocks. And you need a real good stout rod to really put the muscle to them and get them away from those rocks in a hurry. So to start off with, for my reel, I've got a Ross Momentum 6 here. You can use just about any saltwater capable reel with a decent sealed drag. They're not going to run for a mile. You don't need to stop a freight train. But a good drag is good. What they'll do is you'll get them near the surface and they'll try to run back down into the rocks. And since you're generally fly fishing for them and maybe 20 to 80 feet of water or so, they're not running super far. But you need a reel big enough to withstand, to hold up a lot of line, a lot of backing, and then the big heavy lines. And a good quality reel that will stand up to abuse from the salt water. So to start off, I have approximately 250 yards of backing and pre-spun on this particular reel. For backing this year, I'm using this Hatch premium braided backing. It's a 8-strand braid, and it's a 68-pound test. I looked at a bunch of backings this year, and I settled on this. It's a little stronger than gel spun and a lot stronger than Dacron. And when fishing with the rocks and the big fish, I wanted something real strong. On the end of my backing, I've pre-tied just a big loop knot. It's a big Hummer. I could probably stick my whole head through this thing, and the reason for that will be apparent here in just a minute. Now, the first part of the fly line combination is going to be the running line, and I like to use this Rio Cold Water Series shooting line in a full intermediate. I like the intermediate just because I feel it gets a little bit deeper and it fishes just a little better, I think. A full running line or full floating running line will work probably just as well. The heavy heads that we're using for this kind of fishing will pull down a floating running line no problem. But I like to use the intermediate. So on the end of each end of the intermediate line, there's a welded loop. As you can see here, the end that goes to the reel has a smaller welded loop, this end. And to attach this to the backing, I'm just going to take the backing loop and run it through the smaller loop on the welded or the running line. And then I made this loop nice and big so that I can pass this whole fly reel right through it. And then when we pull it tight, we'll end up with a loop-to-loop connection. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and reel the running line onto my reel. Okay. Now you can see the welded loop on the other end of this is quite a bit bigger, and this will help for attaching the head. So for a head, I'm using a 30-foot chunk of Rio T17 material. You can buy this at most fly shops. It comes in a package like this. This is the Rio T20, but it's the exact same package. The T20 comes with welded loops that you have to actually attach versus anything below T20 comes with this is a braided loop, and anything below T20 comes with a welded loop, but that's the only difference. I just didn't have a prepackaged chunk of T17 available for demonstration purposes. So I got my head here, and to attach this to the running line, I'm going to do the exact same thing I did as before with the backing. I'm going to take the big loop off the running line and run it through the small loop on the head, and then pass the whole fly reel through the big loop. And when I pull it tight again, I now have a nice loop-to-loop connection. I can go ahead and reel the head onto my reel. And the head is the part that you're actually going to be fly casting in the traditional sense. It's only the 30 feet. And then it's also going to be used to pull down the rest of your line. With this kind of fishing, you're generally not casting traditionally, 50, 60, 70 feet of line in the air. You're just casting the head and then feeding running line as necessary. Now the last step is going to be attaching a leader. And my leader setup, I like to start with about 3 or 4 feet of 15-pound Maxima Ultra Green. This stuff is fantastic. I use it for all of my saltwater fishing. I have a chunk here pre-tied. What I like to do is I take 3 or 4 feet of it and I'll tie non-slip loops at each end. And then I can simply loop this right onto the end of the loop on my head. So pass the mono through the head loop, pull it through, and then pull the mono back through its own loop and pull it tight. Now this 15-pound section, what it'll do is it gives us a weak spot to break off if necessary. When bottom fishing in the saltwater, you're often getting hung up on the bottom, and you need to be able to break off. If you have 30, 40, 50-pound mono directly off of your head, then you're not going to be able to break that off. And in fact, the weak point in your line is going to be further up. It's going to be at the joint of your head and your running line. It'll be somewhere on your running line, whatever. And you risk losing a head or a running line or both. With a nice weaker spot of 15-pound here, if I ever get hung up on the bottom or for whatever reason I need to break off, it'll break off here rather than breaking off further up. Now the next step is going to be to attach the bite leader. What I like to do is I pre-tie these. You see I have a nice big Lingcod fly here, and I've pre-tied it with about 2 feet of 50-pound mono. I just tied it on with a non-slip loop as I always do, and I tied another non-slip loop at the end. Now I pre-tie these and I keep about 3 or 4 at a piece in Ziploc bags, segregated by size, color, etc. And then what I'll do is I'll simply loop the 50-pound right onto the end of the 15-pound. So I'll run the loop through, take the fly, run it back through the loop, and pull it tight. Now I have about 2 feet of 50-pound mono here, which is going to be very tough and resistant to abrasion from the rocks, lingcod teeth, sea lion encounters, anything that might happen. And then you also have this nice 3/4 foot chunk of 15-pound to break off in the event that you need to. The other nice thing about this is that if I want to change out flies, I simply unloop this, grab another one that's been pre-tied in my box, pull it out, loop it back on, and I'm right back fishing again. So hopefully this gives you an idea of one way to set up for deep water saltwater fly fishing. There's multiple ways to do this. This is an extremely versatile system. What you end up with is a head that you can take off and replace with a different head for a different type of fishing. You can put a lighter head or a heavier head, however you want to do it. It's extremely versatile, and it's just one way to go about it. There's also fully integrated lines that are available. I like to use this particular setup because I feel I have more control over the depth. I feel that the T17 and upwards of T20 will sink a lot faster than most of the heads available on integrated lines. That's just my personal preference. Hopefully you get out there and see what you like to do. Spring's just around the corner here, so we'll be chasing lingcod in Puget Sound. Maybe I'll see you out there.